one thing known about techies are that they're not good orators, except some exceptions, and they're very comfortable when the techies are around them. And it was true for me at this scenario. So don't expect my speaking abilities will be below par. Okay. Coming back to the EMS, we talked about manufacturing. Basically, I'm from 2 decades of telecom software. And so it was a very interesting journey. Why I'm saying it is like, why manufacturing? Because did some startups and so much learning I got because I happened to be, I'm using the word I in the sense that it was an evolving time for software industry as a services. And we lucky to be there, born up at the right time. And so much learning done during that phase. The one is that services prevails. The other thing is that this country has so much talent, in particular Bangalore. And it was a very, very interesting journey. And I luckily chosen the path of entrepreneur, did some startups. And for some good reasons, it worked. But then I learned in that game, for an interim period, I was a part of Lucent Bell Labs. And we were working on the telecom CDMA side. And it was a very mature market when we were doing our, design work. And I was very surprised the moment I realized that the whole GSM, CDMA, which turned out to be a very mature market in US, and already been mature for 2 decades. But then the whole GSM taken over. New technology, somebody thought on that, so much easy to adopt. So that gave me a good business reason to understand that obesity sometimes is a killer, because I realized that for US to change the whole CDMA infrastructure which existed in the 80s and 90s, to move it in 2000 to a GSM, not so easily possible. And now in next 2 decades, now you see, take Asian countries, in particular India, we have a very, very well-established GSM and the lowest cost for a telecom, talk. It's the lowest cost infrastructure in the talk. So coming back from the same analogy, I managed to venture into manufacturing. And you'll be surprised that this company, I really thought of more like a startups, which I did in the software industry, and a hybrid model. The reason for that was that my learning was go for the niche areas. At that time, I realized that EV and the renewable, I'm talking about my journey in 2010 with Indic, was the 2 niche areas. Of course, every time the IoT is a very integral part of it. So we went into that. Another thing I was a bit confused when I was coming to manufacturing was that everyone told me, my all colleagues, my all friends from IT scenario, are we competing with China? And secondly, we people like an entrepreneur brought up to do startups. Why you have to do manufacturing to compete with China as the world on a low-cost basis? Because the cost is the integral part. And I realized that, no, we'll do a different journey here. And I had a very small team. And the only way to do it is the word Sunil talked about was the Sanjeev, is that differentiator. So he said, okay, sure, we'll bring a differentiator. And we'll do it in a very, very different way where the quality, the delivery, and we'll work with the startups more of the way, which is take the new technologies, never take industrial products or anything like that, the new emerging market. And that's where we started the journey. In a decade time, it's become a very different game altogether. So manufacturing like us are not at all into the mass manufacturing. We are having a very good global ones. any customers, I'm talking about the key customers who works with us, we tell them we are not at all, from a manufacturing perspective, interested in your existing product. When you start as a startup, when you start coming up with the new products, the new versions, we'll be partnering with you. And you'll be surprised. The journey, like any startups, for us takes about not between 5, sometimes 8 to 10 years for that particular product, which we start from a nascent stage, to get into the real market volume game. So, I mean, I'm trying to bring the analogy into the startup versus the manufacturing. So I see not only that, like parallelly, you'll be surprised that we are not into this mass race of competing on cost. I do very interesting things in my last almost about 14 years of journey with this EMS industry. Doing very, very interesting, projects with, or the products, I call it, with areas of science. Being an alumni there, I want to give back. And we did very, very interesting things with the robot bots and all that. So please don't be confused about you being in an IoT or in a startup stage. It's the same journey, whether you do it in a software or you do it in a electronics. It's a very, very long journey. Don't get demoralized by the ones. Be very conservative. I mean, I'm not giving here a gyan or a mantra because, but I will tell you, there's so much of similarity between the software industry and the electronic industry or the manufacturing part of it. So I think I'll keep it very short and I'll be ready for the questions whenever it's being asked.
People always talked about either to work with a EMS on a turnkey basis or as a job work. Okay, so how a MSME can take this decision whether to engage with a EMS partner on a turnkey basis or for a job work?
Very interesting question, and actually,
you have to hold it like this.
Yeah, that's really the way we did our journey, and we started with the job work, and particularly from a startup perspective, it's very, very key. And when I was studying the other Asian, my counterparts in Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, they're very clear about any new engagement they do, they start from a job work perspective. Because again, it's not just making a product. This whole cycle of manufacturing is just not assembling it. It goes through a cycle as the right operate, whole ambience of that, the right assembly, the quality check on that, if you're looking for a global product, and then the testing part. So, and of course, the logistics, the certifications we talked about. So, from that perspective, this journey, it's always very, very, much, much easier and much, much more fruitful if you do from a job work perspective. And, you create the credentials. And that's what I tell it to the people here. Most of them are very young from a startup perspective. Like, go slow, go very conservative, take your time. The turnkey people like him, they are very, very good companies who will help you in that journey. So from that perspective, it's always good. And that's a global view of it. The second mantra I just want to share is, please think about going global. That's where the whole job work thing starts.
Correct. Thank you.